All right. Good evening. This is Laurie Wonder with Your Life Core Radio. And again, I'm joined this evening with Mark Griffon from Sedona. Welcome, Mark.
Hello, everybody.
So Mark is in Sedona. I am back in Minnesota, and he, I'm sure, is enjoying that sunshine there. But we had temperatures in the 60s today, so it's actually been quite nice here. But I do appreciate you joining me tonight. And tonight we're going to bring Metatron back. A few weeks ago on a recent episode we talked to Archangel Metatron and just discussed about some of the functions and some of the responsibilities that he has. And I knew at that time he was going to want to come back and speak with us, and tonight's that night, so we're going to invite him back with us. And then we are also going to talk about Metatron's cube, sacred geometry, and the pineal gland, and really anything else that Mark might want to share with us as it relates to the things, the codes, and the keys that are going to be activating in us, particularly during this time. And I just have to say, Mark, today it's the solar eclipse, and it has felt like 2 different days for me. I don't, how are you feeling in Sedona? The energy there has to be super ramped up.
Yeah, it was. I kind of felt maybe mid-afternoon around 2 o'clock, just like a heavy, drowsy feeling when I was on tour, and then pressure in my head. And that subsided after the sunset. So I'm not sure when the actual eclipse correlated the time zone that I'm in, but definitely was something very palpable. And personally for me, it was directly impacting my birth son. So I wasn't surprised that I would be feeling it in some kind of a physical way. And I think overall. Like an intensity, that's all. It's the best way to describe it. There's just an intensity, and it's kind of wanting and pushing us to let go of the old paradigms.
I would agree with that. And I noticed today my day was in a lot of different domains. I was feeling emotion in different domains. And when I mean domains, I mean like it might be dealing with my kids, or it might be something came up in my corporate work, or something came up in my business, or in my own relationship. Those types of things. It just really kind of ran the gamut around the domains. And the message I've been giving to people is when something comes up in those domains, it's an indication of it's wanting to be heard or reacted to or worked through. And I think that's the grace that we're in right now that we talked about the last time we did this, was kind of being brave and working through those. So before we go on, I want to remind people that you're in Sedona. We talked about that, but you own Sedona Mystical Tours, and you do a ton of work on the land. You work with people there at your property in Sedona, but you take tours and you do healing work and energy work out on the land. And so there's the energy that's on the land, but on your property where you often do work with people, you have some tools on your land there too, and I want to make sure we talk about those too, because you've got a Merkaba on your property as well as other grids. And as we talk about sacred geometry, I want to make sure we come back and touch on those pieces.
Sure.
Okay.
The one thing about the Merkaba that I have, it's of a size where an individual can sit in the middle of it, and like the circumference base, you could have 10, 15, even 20 people aligning it, and it just serves the function of facilitating what we're going to be talking about, that Merkaba light vessel coming in to the individual who's in the middle or those who are on the perimeter.
Yeah, and I actually sat in that Merkaba, so I can't wait to share my experience with our listener audience here in a little bit. I want to back us up a little bit, and I want to give our audience just some background about who Metatron is. And Metatron is known to be only one of 2 archangels that lived as a man on earth and then ascended into the heavens, and his earth name was Enoch. And so many of our listeners might be familiar with the book The Keys of Enoch, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. He was given the keeper of the records, the earth records, the heaven records. And so as he ascended into the heavens, he was really given that task of writing everything down about things that happen into in our lives. So the Akashic records are about our past, present, and future. But the Akashic records are actually more than that, right? They contain codes and keys and information that some of us can't even decipher quite yet. Would you agree with that, Mark?
Yeah, because it's really the history of our individual souls.
Yeah.
So that's infinite, and we're in a finite domain. So the translation just wouldn't be occurring as, in a fluid way. So we get bits and pieces.
Right. And so when I look at people's energy, and we've talked about this before, when I look at people's energy, I look at their aura, or I see a grid overlay or codes or keys or light coming down. It contains that codes and keys. So let's talk about that just a little bit, because I get asked quite a bit about what are codes and keys, and why do we need them, and what do they do for us? And I look at them as we're embedded with information. I mean, we're energy. Everything's always moving. And we contain information. So when I interact with clients, or if I interact with you, we're exchanging words, or we're exchanging information, but we're actually exchanging energy codes and keys with each other that unlocks other energy frequencies within us that we don't even know that's happening sometimes. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and unless you're really aware, you're a sensitive person and you've been working in this field for any length of time, you would probably just assume it's some kind of chemistry between the individuals, more like almost like an animal connection. But what you are saying is that the codes or the keys are coming in to open up levels of conscious awareness for the individual. And I kind of make the presumption that a person who's at a higher level of conscious awareness can trigger that opening for others. And this is just like a reference scale. Mm-hmm. So if you're at 500 or 600 on this reference scale, somebody's at 300, you'll assist them in opening up so they could get to 220, 230.
Mm-hmm. And that's a great example on that. And what we've talked about is we're seeing quite a bit where relationships are coming together, or friendships or business partnerships are coming together, and people are curious as to why the intensity of the relationship, or why when they meet these people it feels like I've known them forever, and they want to know if they've been connected in past lifetimes and if they're their soulmate or their twin flame. But a lot of what we're seeing is just this activation between energy sources, and we're an energy source. So if I meet someone and there's an immediate liking, and we get an immediate understanding of each other, we're actually exchanging energy codes that elevate us into that higher frequency that you just explained. And that's happening more and more and more now. And why is that? Let's talk about why that is.
Well, from what's taking place today, and this time period that we're in, this year is really going to be intense. And the intensity is our souls, let's just say our souls, collectively and individually, are wanting us to accept the newness of what's entering the planet. And the newness could be no more limitation, no more lack, no more, limiting fear. We're always going to have to deal with that. Abandonment, these core issues that have plagued humanity and are embedded in humanity's pain body are now given an opportunity to be released by consciously accepting the fact that this new paradigm of consciousness is available to us. And so the intensity is our soul, and maybe our guides are excited. There's an excitement of making a breakthrough on our individual soul's journey. So it's kind of a group effort with us individually and, of course, collectively. And that's part of the intensity. It's a new vibration. It's much like having a higher form of electricity go through a wiring system that's designed for the lower voltage. So we're kind of having to be rewired. And at times you feel tired, or your body aches, or you have headaches, and that's part of what's taking place. And then the dynamic, I think, between people, maybe soul agreements that when you get together, there's going to be growth. And of course, it's always confused with the base, chemistry, attraction stuff. But what I'm really seeing is our souls are just wanting us to change, and they're going to push every button they can to get us to do that.
Right. I like to think about as the universe is always living, and it's a living energy, and we're a living energy. And so with that, there's a constant change. And so what we're doing is we're transmitting, or it's a transmission of this living energy that is now coming into us. It's not a stagnant, it's not a one-time thing. It's a living, breathing energy. And that's, as you said, triggering, and it's pushing us to move forward on that. And that's its only purpose. If we have a reaction, its only purpose is to get us to move. And sometimes we don't like that, we don't agree with that, but we're in this time of movement. And how does, so I think of Metatron, Archangel Metatron. I can answer how he comes and he works with me, or he works with clients to give them information of their past, present, and future. And he's got this immense passion for children. He hates labels. I think I remember meeting him when I was quite young. I don't remember the exact age or anything, but I know it was after Archangel Michael, and I couldn't quite figure out his name because it just sounded so different. But I do remember he had this immense love for children. And I was kind of geeky in my younger, in grade school. I was into math. I loved math, and I was given fun assignments and stuff. And he would sit with me. I always felt like he would sit with me, or he would give me information. And I'm wondering if now, as an adult, I look back on that, I'm like, the math and the formulas and those types of things, that's part of his sacred geometry. And Mark, can you tell us a little bit about the sacred geometry and the Merkaba and those types of things that he is that keeper, that master of, or how he fits into that?
First off, I think partly his compassion for children probably is part of his experience as a mortal on this planet. So there's a deeper relating to what we go through.
Absolutely. He gets us.
And
he really gets us.
He understands the shock that occurs for children as they come into this dimension. The soul comes in and it's hit with the density, the harshness of what we're living in. And it's for a lot of kids, of course, it's a struggle, and I think that's partly why he is drawn to wanting to support them. His higher functions are helping the cellular alignment, helping the body receive these higher codes of, let's call them higher codes of intelligence. And he would be like the engineer or the overseer for this planetary plane, the dimensions that we're existing in, opening up these gateways. Much like just simply how an engineer would design a system. It's called transduction, of taking a higher form of energy, transducing it, lowering it to enter the framework of what we have here. Otherwise, it would be kind of like sending a thermonuclear weapon, into a grade school.
Mm-hmm. I think back now about engineering, and you've got a background in engineering, and I've got a background in engineering, and even as a child, I remember sitting and doodling, and I watched my kids as they were growing up and would watch their doodling as they were doodling almost sacred geometry. And that's another nugget of wisdom that creates that portal, and we're stepping in some of those portals right now. In fact, we're like in the middle of a portal, and people are choosing whether they're going to step through or kind of go through this wormhole effect, or they're going to stay back. And I believe in talking with him and listening to him is that he's kind of helping some push through that tunnel or push through that portal. In some, he's showing them the way, but he's very active with us right now.
I would have to agree. I'm just, I'm bearing witness to how people are responding to what's taking place on the land in Sedona, because the geophysics of Sedona are kind of enhancing the Merkaba connection. For the individual, it's like a vessel of light that comes down and around us. Think about Star Trek and the transporting mechanism that they had, the tube of light. So, we can envision the Merkaba energy to be similar to that. And it goes through the various dimensions, and it goes through the universes beyond the speed of light. So that allows us to, connect with higher levels of intelligence in universes who knows how far away, within nanoseconds.
Mm-hmm. So if we think about it, it really is a transport, and we all have our I believe we all have our own personal transports, but it's kind of hard to describe. But if you can envision, it's described as Metatron's cube, and Mark, maybe if you've got a better description, please jump in here. But it's really composed of 13 equal circles, and the lines are all interconnected from the center of each circle, extending out to the center of the other 12 circles. And some New Age teachers or holistic teachers, they actually call it the fruit of life versus the tree of life. But it creates this visual of almost a triangle on a triangle on a triangle. That's the best I can explain it. But if you Google it, you can very easily see the geometric visual of that. And as you talk about the it's the light vehicle, and the one that you have in your yard and the one I sat in, it really does, it doesn't like transport you like the Star Trek beam me up, Scotty, but I did move energetically into a higher dimension. And that's really what it is that the mer part of that means light, and the ka means spirit, and the ba means body. So when you put those together, it's a transformation of the light and the spirit and the body into other dimensions. But to move in that, we have to be ready for that. We have to be open to that. And I think that's also where Metatron is coming in and assisting us in doing this work right now. And I don't mean to keep coming back to the triggers and doing the work, but we have to be doing this in order for us to step into these activation points.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. One thing that physics has already proven is that we exist in anywhere from 10 to 14 dimensions at the same time. So that, what we think we are as this physical body is just a fraction of what we truly are. And the Merkaba, like what you were mentioning, sitting in the arrangement that I have, it kind of allowed you to transport yourself without intentional effort into those higher dimensions of yourself and gain that insight, that knowledge, that healing, whatever is needed, whatever you're ready for at that time. And quite, if we're hesitant, if we're reluctant, if we don't have the desire to move into these realms, then nothing's going to happen really. It's, cannot go against our free will. So both of us have been mentioning how there has to be a will, the will of the individual to seek these higher forms of awareness. And as they do so, then life becomes a little bit easier. It flows a little bit better. And the sense of limitation and restriction and fear are less and less of a factor in our daily lives.
So the Merkaba, that's one tool, and on your property you can sit alongside of it, you can actually sit in it, and I've got some crystals and I've got some grids at my home that I also use as tool. But what about our listeners that don't have their personal Merkaba? What do we tell them as to how do they activate or how do they move into this higher consciousness?
Well, there's meditations. You could go online and just do Merkaba meditations. YouTube would have a lot of examples. And John Melchizedek's taught a lot techniques, the flower of life techniques of connecting those parts of ourselves. And I would just say it just takes practice and, a regular routine to kind of like a muscle, just keep strengthening that process. And as that happens, then more awareness and sensations and expansion of conscious and mental patterns even will change, and you'll simply continue to grow and understand and sense the greater purpose of your individual life. But if you don't make that effort, then like you mentioned earlier on, you're kind of just sitting on the sidelines.
And we can observe. I mean, you can observe yourself as to the experiences that you've had, but I repeatedly get the message that we are living an experiential life, and so we have to experience. And observation is good only when we observe what we've experienced, but observing somebody else without really going through those actions can be very limiting for some people. So in the Merkaba, I just was thinking about when I was out there in Sedona, and I saw a couple clients on the property, and one of my clients actually, she crawled in the Merkaba, she sat there, and she had never experienced something like that. And she totally opened up her crown chakra and her third eye, and she felt very lightheaded, and not in a bad way at all. It opened that up. And I know sometimes when I've been there and I've sat alongside, I feel it in different chakras, or I feel it in different energy ports. But would you say is it safe to say that people might experience this newness or these activations in different energy ports of their body, or can they all expect it in their crown or their third eye because of the pineal activation? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a penetrating question, and my guess is that it would be the upper triad of our physical form that these impressions would be coming through. And if you want to call it the activation, opening up the flow, in a sense, coming down the spine and then back up through the chakra system of the body. And I'm just searching for any words that pop up about this new phase, but I personally have always felt that it comes in through the head area first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking that if it's in any of the other chakras, it might just be clearing some residue or activating, because we're always activating and we're always shifting in all our energy ports. I believe also that right now the places that are being activated are the upper chakras. In fact, the higher chakras, the universal love, the higher consciousness, the chakras that are above the 7 that we're familiar with. But I was just curious on your thoughts.
I think that's more accurate.
On that.
The chakras outside the physical body are being more opened. It just makes sense that higher intelligence is going to have to come through that portal first.
Mm-hmm. And the wavelengths are different. We know that. I see different colors. I hear different frequencies. I see different vibrations. So I know that the wavelengths, the vibrational frequencies are different. They're coming in at a higher frequency. Yeah, I've noticed that in my yard.
As I said, I've just been staring at the rocks in the environment, and I can, last week or so, I've literally seen like a geometric or matrix type pattern descending into the earth. So I totally agree with you on that one.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about the book, The Keys of Enoch, because I have the book in front of me, and I use it as more of a reference manual. I'll just open to a section and I'll read a section every now and then, and it contains so much information about the keys and the light waves and higher evolution. Is there any golden nuggets that you would want to share out of this book with
Well, it was written
listeners?
in the 70s, And, I personally know the author. He's come to Sedona many times. There was a big study group book back in the 90s as well. It kind of explains the merging of science and spirituality, if you will. Many of the things that are stated in the book written in the 70s have been proven with the scientific method. So it's kind of prophetic. It's kind of showing the evolutionary path that we're currently going through. It explains, the biochemistry that we'll be experiencing. It explains time travel, explains how the universe from a gazillion light years away can influence us at this level, and even in this almost in a way of an equation. It talks about how that process can unfold to where we're at right now, and it's essentially a technical book about the ascension process for us individually and then us collectively, and the planet as a collective whole.
Mm-hmm. It's the pieces that I've pulled out are fascinating. One of the pieces that I remembered as all the publicity came out about the Earth has finally moved into the fifth dimension and we're at this 528 hertz, is that this book talks about the fifth dimension in its relationship to the circulatory system. And I remember reading that thinking, is that our physical body's circulatory system or is it our energy field? And I actually believe it's our energy field circulatory system that's going through a huge adjustment now. And that makes us feel crazy sometimes. And even today when we had the solar eclipse and I know maybe some of the jarring of the electromagnetic force that's around us, that's a shift in the fifth dimension that's happening around us, but it's a shift in our energy field. So it's interesting that this was written in the 70s. We're experiencing it. I feel like we experience it in layers again and again and again. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, about the layers that we go through, because I do feel like the information that I've pulled from here are relevant now. They're still relevant. They're going to be relevant years from now because it talks about the layers of the different dimensions. And you talked about the, how we can be between 10 and 14 dimensions at any time. It's those layers that we have to go through. That's why we never feel like we're done. We're just going through layers and repeat patterns.
I feel the same way. I've been having this type of a life since my mid-20s, and so that's going back into the 80s. And, when you go through massive transitions and transformations physically, emotionally, mentally, you kind of feel like you've reached a plateau. But as you keep going along this journey, more and more of those plateaus start occurring, and you get to a point where you realize it is truly just evolving up until the last breath that you have on the planet, and it's just something you get used to. And once again, like you said, it's life being here on this planet. We're meant to experience as much as our soul desires.
Absolutely. And when I listen to the angels and when they say as much as our souls desire, that's that experiencing world. I mean, experiencing life, like being excited about life, being excited to try new things, because there's so much more available to us than I think the majority of the population believes they can have or is available. And so this is a great time to push ourselves to stretch into those belief systems or those areas that we maybe haven't accessed before.
Yeah, the new paradigms.
Which is pushing us into the pineal area. I wanted to talk there a little bit because I do activations with people, and I do atonements and anointments in that area, and I've been seeing a lot more people that are both knowledgeable about the pineal and what it is, and they want theirs activated. And so can we talk about that for just a little bit, and how that fits with our body and what's happening there with that?
This is another good addition to what we're talking about.
Yeah, so it's related to our third eye, or the sixth chakra, and it's actually considered the most powerful and the highest source of energy, ethereal energy available to humans. It's always been really important in initiating what I would call some of our supernatural powers or our gifts. And really for many people that's their psychic talents or just an understanding of how their physical body functions in a spiritual or in an energetic
Yeah,
world.
it does.
Does that make sense?
The endocrine system, which those are part of, those three glands up there, um, they get stimulated with vibration, and they secrete fluids, which, it could provide, like you said, a number of exceptional sensations, uh, and that's the kind of the conduit from those other realms that are non-physical into this physical body.
Yeah. So it's that place that allows us to connect between the physical and the spiritual world, and I think that's the excitement thing that I'm seeing in the world around me. And I'll take, for example, working with my kids or working with the corporate, or I just sent someone a list of places to go in Sedona, and spiritual places, and an explanation about what all the vortexes were, someone in a high corporate role. And I just went, wow, I'm just seeing this more and more, where people are very inquisitive about how they react in the space of nature, and what triggers those things. So you talked about the three glands and the secretions that they do, and the third eye really controls the biorhythms in the body. And it's those patterns that we have, the electromagnetic patterns. And it works in harmony with the hypothalamus gland, and that affects the body's, in the physical sense, it affects the body's thirst, hunger, your sexual desire, your biological clock, and that actually determines our aging process. And I personally know a lot of people that they're really working on reversing their aging. They swear and they believe that they are reversing the aging process by doing work with with the glands, the endocrinology system, their adrenal glands, the hypothalamus glands. And you touched on before with sound. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I just use it with the work I do here. And it just opens up the sensation of connecting with the resonance flowing from the earth here. It's almost like a instantaneous reaction for the individuals. And I know vibration is a big part of stimulating those glands. So my feeling is, and there's much information as well on the internet again, of the higher frequencies being an aid for the function of these glands, the secretions of the fluids that are beneficial. Anti-aging, I sure would like to, do more of that. And I think with what I've been seeing as far as information, we're capable of doing a lot more now with our physical form.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree with that. I think I'm chuckling because it's like I think we should figure that out and bottle that and sell that, because we do, the 60 is the, or the 50 is the new, yep. And so our aging process is just very different, and that continues to shift for us. So we talk about sound a lot, and sound because of the vibration. And I know you and I both use singing bowls, and we use them on people, to put right on the source, to go right into the physical body, and then it emanates out into the emotional and the spiritual and the energy place. Let's talk a little bit about some different ways to activate the pineal gland. I know I tell people to get out in the sun. That's one of the probably the best ways to get out in the sun. And I do know some clients, I've had some people ask, they had written or they had read an article about sun gazing, and I don't recommend gazing directly into the sun because you don't want to burn your eyes, but if it's at a quieter time of day, perhaps in the evening or in the morning, to gaze into the sun. I honestly think that's why we're so drawn to sunrises and sunsets, is it's something deep within us that is connecting and evolving. But you being in Sedona and being out in the sun, I also think that's key to what you see with some of your clients out on the land.
Yeah, I know it's
there.
a part of it. We also had, almost a mile high in elevation, clear skies. So the rays of the sun come in a sense more strongly, more penetrating. And as far as the sun gazing, it's sunrise and sunset are considered safe times. And I've been doing it for years, never had any. Actually, I think it keeps my eyes healthy. And I know many other people, especially the native cultures, do that routinely. And so there is some truth about that vibration going, literally through the physical eye into the brain, because that's what I feel personally when I stare at the sun. I could feel activation inside my head.
Right. I would agree with that. I can feel movement, and people often ask, well, how do I know if my pineal gland is activated? And it's really, I feel it, and I tell people that you feel a pressure at the base of the neck, and so many people might be getting headaches or pressure pain at the base of the neck as they're going through the stage of activation. I agree. I used to have that a lot
when I lived in California in the 80s. Tremendous headaches where I could barely stand or walk. And, I took a few things to calm that, but it is part of the process.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Another way to help in awakening the pineal gland is to sleep in complete darkness. And sometimes that's hard for people because of, a lot of people have TVs in their bedroom, or they have their phones alongside their bed, or they have a, other light in their bedroom. But the dark environment really ensures your pineal gland produces enough melatonin to ensure that you get good, restful sleep. And so I recommend to people that they, if you're going to put your phone in your room, turn it over, or, make sure that you are sleeping in total darkness. And that would also help people that are going through this awakening process are having a hard time sleeping. I'm getting a lot of reports of people that they're just tired of being woken at 3 in the morning and not being able to get back to sleep. So try to make your bedrooms and your sleeping space as complete dark as you can. That would help quite a bit.
I agree there.
Yeah, and then we've talked about meditation quite a bit. Mark, you mentioned some really good. Just go on to do some searches and find some very good meditations about the pineal gland, because it responds to the bioelectric signals of both light and dark, and meditation actually activates this bioelectric energy. And you also talked about practice, and I think I do a lot of group-led meditations, and people often say, I don't know how to meditate. And the first thing I tell them is stop saying that and just know that it's a practice, and let go of any expectations that you have and just relax. And when you can relax and you can direct energy to a particular place, and in this case, if you do an activation meditation and you're directing energy and you're focusing on the brain, or particularly the spot in your brain, it's a highly sensitive organ, and so when we meditate, we're emitting a vibration that this organ then picks up, and so with that sensitivity, it in itself is being activated by our own meditation process. Okay. Do you have any other tips that you would have on activation?
Well, it may be a little bit unconventional, but I've literally noticed after rigorous exercise, my third eye's it kind of feels like it's been slammed open, where I start seeing things with my naked eye, like fairies, for example. And so that maybe translates into a flow of oxygen and the circulation of blood. And once again, that may be more unique to somebody like me, somebody living in Sedona at this altitude. But it's, that movement, if you think oxygen, opening up the flow in the brain, and that pineals, a lot of people's pineals are calcified, and so that may be one technique of decalcifying it, and at the same time that activates it. We forget that fluoride, we forget that the chemicals will calcify that pineal gland, and simple things like what I just mentioned. And there's different substances you can look online that will help that too. That can just cause a sudden opening that almost has you spellbound. And the breathing techniques, yogic breathing techniques, they recommend that you're sitting when you start doing them, because the same thing can happen where you just become disoriented and dizzy.
Right. Yeah, there are some really good breathing meditations as well as breathing through yoga, and that really opens up and activates all centers of the body.
So that's one way people can meditate without trying to meditate, is just focus on breathing.
Yeah, that's true. It's very true. So anything else that you'd like to share about Metatron or sacred geometry or Metatron's cube?
Well, the sacred geometry goes back to Plato with the Platonic solids. These are just geometric patterns that various influences coming from different parts of the universe and universes beyond the one we're in even, enter our dimension. Once again, the process is called transduction. And coming from a higher power source down to a lower power source, there has to be like mechanisms, if you want to look at circuitry, that can provide that in what would be more of a graceful and accepting, absorbing way for our human form. And also the limitations that this planet, the dimension is in, the consciousness of humanity. The Metatron cube is kind of one way you can look at a diagram, realizing that you could begin to access and create this type of geometry around you, in and through you. It's just a matter of finding the right technique that works for you. And think about Metatron as a relative. He shared our experiences, at a time when things were a lot harsher than they are now. And so his influence can be very like parental for us. And the Creator has all kinds of emissaries and all kinds of subordinates that are in place to assist us with this process. And Metatron is just one of the coordinators of it.
Yeah, he's very active. And one of the other things I wanted to touch on tonight is we talk quite a bit about the young children, and Metatron has this special place in his heart for the young children and the crystal children, or children of the sun, the rainbow children, all the higher frequency children that are coming in now. But we often forget about the indigo adults that are now moving into the crystal. So they're actually crystal adults. They were indigo children, now moving into crystal adults. And he's reminding me that he works with all of us in that as we go through this transformation.
Yeah, we're some of the original indigos, people in our generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so sometimes that the title or the name indigo feels old because we've outgrown it. We've transformed into crystal adults, or adults of the sun, and as we grow, or as we transform ourselves in that direction.
And we've also we've already done this in past lives. That's what makes us a little bit different than the ones that are following.
Absolutely. So it's a matter of remembering And for some, for some people, I often wonder why it's so difficult for some to remember and it's so easy for others to remember, and that's part of maybe the trauma or the history or those types of things that we get to work through. But it's simply remembering. And I go through times where I'll meditate and I'll remember something from a previous lifetime, or suddenly I have new knowledge or new skills that I didn't have a year ago or 2 years ago. And the universe is really our teacher. I tell people that. I said all we have to do is just allow the universe to grant us and to teach us, because it's really giving us that
I agree.
information.
That's how I've done and conducted so much of the services I provide. I haven't had a whole lot of direct training. I studied a lot back in the 80s and early 90s, and have been more going along the lines of what you said, is just being open up to remembering what I've already done, and then just practicing it, and then going along with the next thing that comes through. It is kind of like a domino effect. And then I have a lot of reference books, and so you don't necessarily need to read the whole book like you mentioned, but the Keys of Enoch's, other books that don't that I have, I'll just randomly just open them up to a page, and then it's like my soul saying, okay, this is important for you to understand right now at this moment, and then figure out what to do with the information from there.
I would agree. We're always being directed. I taught a class over the weekend, and I was reminded that when I was very young in second grade or third grade, my teachers were the archangels and the ascended masters. I mean, I had traditional teachers here on earth that taught me English and math and those types of things, but the universe always provides us those teachers, and we forget that sometimes. And I personally feel like now in 2016 and going forward, they are more present for us than ever before, simply because this is new information. So there's still material, I would say old material, that might be relevant to people, but there's so much new that is not here on earth, and it has to come from another source. And that's the fun of it, is it's coming from teachers that are beyond this dimension.
And that's what it's coming through that geometry called the Merkaba.
Yes, absolutely. And to be open to that, again, so our listeners understand, it's like, how do I step into that energy port? How do I step into that portal? It's always there for them. Whether you're sitting in your living room or your kitchen, it's there for you. It's just being able to quiet the mind and to consciously step into that energy.
Yeah, you just have to give yourself the opportunity. I mentioned to all my customers, just give yourself 20 minutes a day to yourself in a quiet space, and just be and see what comes through. But you have to do that.
So I asked Metatron, I have a simple little prayer, and it doesn't have to be this formal, but I wanted to give our listeners something that they could use to invoke Metatron. I mean, some of us like to have mantras or personal prayers, or a little saying that we have on our computer or refrigerator. And so this is one that I've used in the past, and I call it a portal prayer. And I simply ask Metatron and the spirit of love and truth to create and activate a sacred energetic portal here at this time. And I ask that Metatron and all the masters of the Akashic Records, or those that are the helpers, that they allow me access to any codes, keys, information that I might have access to at this time, and allow me to do that at the frequency that is comfortable to me at this time. And it doesn't have to be in those words. It can be something that you're just focusing your intent or focusing your words on. Now as I sit on my couch or at my dining room table, now as I sit, I'm using this space to activate and to open up this portal.
I think that's a great idea. And it just has to be done regularly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So anything else before we begin to close out this night? The time always goes so fast, Mark. Anything else that in your years of wisdom, in your years of working with energy, anything that you think is relevant to share with our listeners as we begin to close out?
I would just, continually remind everyone, this is an opportunity to let go of all the pain, the suffering, the charges of emotion from anything that's happened to you in not just this life or others that you may not be conscious of, because you're freeing yourself up for these new opportunities. And the world's not going to change unless we individually accept newness. Why not, take that opportunity now? Why not just go with what's being presented? Compare it, look at it as a new relationship, a new job, a new place to live. Feel how excited you are when you enter those things. Well, these are the new energies that are going to be providing us the opportunity for all that to happen. But it's not going to happen if you're holding on to the baggage of, like I said, all the things that have created discomfort, trauma, disharmony, imbalance in previous existences. From my understanding, the polarity that we lived in with the old paradigms was just giving us almost like a motivation to accept these new paradigms and the graceful flow that will occur as we accept the new paradigms. So just really embrace this and don't let fear stop you from newness. Don't let fear stop you from this adventure that's being presented.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. And as you're talking, my office just heated up as Archangel Michael is just stepping in, because he is that master of providing us courage and burning away any fear that we might have. So that's a beautiful message. I agree wholeheartedly. Say yes to the adventure ahead and yes to the experience that life provides to all of us. So with that, Mark Griffon, I want to again thank you for joining me this evening, and to our listeners, you're listening to Your Life Core Radio. I'm Laurie Wanderer with my guest tonight, Mark Griffon of Sedona Mystical Tours, and I want to close out this night just from a simple message from the archangels, their helpers, from the ascended masters, any loved ones that have been around you this evening, and for Mark and I. May your energy fields be open to be infused with and have the sustainable frequency of love, peace, joy, happiness, abundance, and compassion. And may you feel open to calling on your angels, your archangels, the helpers of the universe that work to support and help you. And with that, we send you with all the light and the love of the universe.
Good night.
Good night.